everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this afternoon's That and Now session. My name's Ian Fales. I'm the editor-in-chief of Befores and Afters magazine. And I'm really excited today to have a slightly different hands-on session at FMX where you're going to see how to shoot a forced perspective shot live here on stage. And we're going to talk about what that involves and where it gets used. The person running that is Todd Sheridan Perry. Please come up to the stage, Todd. He is the visual effects supervisor from I'm a Virgo, has also worked on For All Mankind, Black Panther, and a number of other films. Please welcome Todd Perry.
Thank you.
Now, Todd, I should say one thing right up front is we need 2 volunteers, don't we?
Yes, we do.
The volunteer work will involve standing up on stage for pretty much most of the presentation. Have we got any volunteers?
Can we bring up the house lights, please,
yep.
so that we can kind of see?
I just saw someone put their hand up. Go for it.
Come on up. And then in the back.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
stripes.
Round of applause for the volunteers. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Ian.
Guillaume, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for doing this. And hello.
I'm Sophia. Hi.
Hi, Sophia. Ian?
Yes, you did. You volunteered way early.
Yeah. All right. I think I'm going to let you take it away, Todd.
All right. Okay. So as a preface to this, and why we decided to do this type of thing is after we got done with I'm Virgo, we had a screening for some other visual effects supervisors, Phil Tippett and Dennis Murin and John Knoll, and we kind of asked them, did we do this all right? Did we? How does this look to you? Could we have done things better? And after probably an hour and a half of talking about this show with them, John Knoll had said, you know, really what you should do is you should make like a video channel or something to teach these techniques to people, because it's not about the equipment now or about the software or about the hardware or anything. It's about knowing that you can do it. So if you have a camera and you know how to do it, then you can accomplish a forced perspective shot. And basically he was kind of asking me to take the torch of this and keep that information going to distribute it out so that young filmmakers or people making indie stuff or low budget stuff know that they can do it. And they don't need green screens, they don't need compositors, they don't need all of the technology that comes along with it. They can just go out and make a movie with a big person or small person, and it's within their grasp. So this is me imparting knowledge onto you. So we're going to get started with this. And just to let you know, I have not rehearsed this at all. I've gone through it technically, but I haven't rehearsed the procedure because I wanted it to feel like we were like we were assembling it on set, and things go wrong on set, and things don't go as planned on set, and I just want us to kind of roll with what we're doing. And so I'll step us through this step by step and show you what is wrong about something, and then we'll adjust and we'll make it right. And so the idea behind this is we're going to make you, Guillermo, we're going to make you big, and then you're going to be normal size. And the idea is that the big person is closer to camera. And that seems like a really simple concept. Something is closer and it looks bigger. But there are all kinds of depth cues and perspective cues that tell us, the viewer, whether something is close to the camera or whether something is big in camera. And so the first step is you're going to be halfway toward the camera. And then we'll see kind of what that looks like. And then we'll start making adjustments from there. And the concept is that your world is a half-scale world because you are twice as big. So that whole world kind of shrinks down around the camera. So where the camera is, his world shrinks down by half the size. That's what the ratio is going to be. He's going to be twice as tall as she is. And the reason for that is that it makes the math easy, and we don't have to worry too much about it. So to get started here, I got a little tripod that I brought with me. And what we're going to do is we're going to use an iPhone just to show that we don't need any kind of specialized cameras or anything like that. Plus, the iPhone, the lens is so tiny and the sensor is so tiny, it gives us a deeper depth of field. And that's really important because he needs to be in focus and she needs to be in focus. And if we were on a normal camera, we might be able to hit that depth of field, but it's just easier to do with an iPhone. And also, if you happen to have an iPhone and want to make a movie, then you can do that. There's no restrictions. So is this working here? Okay. So let's try this. The image is going to be reversed. We don't know why. And this is an interesting concept at a technology show that we can't flip the camera around.
We tried.
We tried.
We really did try.
Okay, the next bit of equipment is a measuring tape. And so what we're going to do is, Sophie, we're going to put you just standing right in the corner, like right here.
Okay.
All right? And we're going to measure how far we're going to be away from you. I may flip-flop back and forth between imperial units and metric because I'm American. We're going to go with, let's say, 15 feet. All right, so she's 15 feet away from the camera. And he, as a big person, is also 15 feet away from the camera. So we're going to make him look like he is standing next to her. But since he's normal size, he's going to be 7.5 feet toward the camera here. So we will go from Sophie's feet and we'll go to, there you go, 7.5 feet. And hopefully all of my math is correct. Anybody can correct me if I'm not like dividing by half appropriately. Okay, so what we have here is we have an improper forced perspective shot. And that's because he just looks like somebody's...
Just ignore that message from my mother.
Do you want to... do you want to get that, Ian?
Let's turn notifications off.
Yes.
I think it was about this gentleman in the front row, anyway.
Okay, so the reason why this isn't necessarily working is because all he is half as close to camera. So it just looks like he's closer to camera than she is. And that reason is because his world is shrinking this way and this way as well as this way. And so we need to put him a little bit higher in frame to make sure that that works. Now, to do that, normally you would set up your camera and then you would figure out the platform. And the platform would be half as high as that, as the camera lens. Where did I put this? Okay. So if I wanted my camera to be here, and the lens of this is roughly 45 inches high, then we would need a platform that is, 22.5 or so. We don't have that platform, but on set, we would have the grips and so forth bring in a platform, and they would set it up 25 inches high, and then his world would be matched in scale to her world. So instead, we're going to do it backwards. I brought a little step stool from home. This is 9 inches tall. So we're going to have you step up onto here. Why don't you step up and with your feet like this facing the audience so that it's stable. That's getting there, but our camera is too high. So if this is 9 inches high, then our camera lens needs to be 18 inches high. So we'll lower this down. Fortunately, this thing goes down this low. And remember, it's not the camera body that needs to be that. It's the lens. It's where you're capturing the image from. All right, so our camera is at the right height now, but we should probably tilt this up. So you can see, though, that his feet are now parallel to where her feet are. And so if we just tilt up a little bit further, oh my gosh, you're so tall. And so if you just bend down a little bit, that'll work, or you can just kind of look down on her. Okay. Then you have a big person and and a tall. So that gets us pretty well into the world where it just looks like he's big and she's smaller. Or that's exactly right. And so in order to refine this somewhat, this is really important, this interaction that you were seeing here. She was great because she could see what she was doing and could kind of adjust to it. But when you can't see, then the next level is you need to get these two to be looking at one another. And that means that you need to adjust your eye lines. So he needs to know where she is in his world, right? So in his world, she is half the size. So I'm gonna just, we'll just round it out. So let's say 65 inches. So, so half of 65, what is that? 32 and a half. Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a character now who's 32 and a half inches tall. Now, if we were to do this, that would be incorrect because we're in his world. His floor is right here. So it's not 32 and a half, it's 32 and a half plus 9. So what is that, 41 and a half? Is that right? Yes, sir. Thank you for confirming. All right, so now, if that height is there, that is about how high she is back there, right? And so this right here is approximately where her head is, right? This is weird being backwards like this. There we go. So it's around here. But in perspective, she's about right here. So her character, if you didn't want to do all of the measuring and stuff, you could do the poor man's version and you can just go, okay, her face is right there. So that's his eye line for her. So keep looking at my fist. And then what was behind, when I move my fist, look what is behind my fist. Okay. Is there like something that you can look at? Yeah. Normally you would take like tape or something like that and put it down so that he knows where he needs to be looking. You have a little bit of an advantage because you can see where he is. But in your world, then his eye line, if you lean down just a hair, like right in there. So his eye line is there. That's how tall he is. So if you look behind where the tape is and kind of find a mark behind there, then that is where you would be looking. So if you put those two together and you're looking at him and you're looking at her, then you get this connection between the two characters. Right? Is that working? Woo! I feel like David Copperfield or something.
Magic.
All right, so the next level is, so why don't you hold out your hand? So you'll give a high five. I know you can't see her, but can you reach his hand in the frame? Yeah. So that way, all Oh, I totally borked the shot.
But actually, that's kind of interesting because this is about what might go wrong on a
Yeah,
set.
exactly.
So
as long as we
Don't fall
hold
over
our
the
height
camera.
and everything. No. Because you have to respond to your mom at some point. So in I'm a Virgo, we would frequently have an iPad that would get a streaming version of what the camera was seeing, and so we would put that iPad in his eyeline so that he was looking in the proper eyeline, but he was also seeing what the camera was seeing, so he could do these kinds of interactions. So we had some gags where he was like slapping a whole bunch of people, and so he could get his slap right while they were way down there reacting to the slap, because he could see what that reaction was needed to be. And it's in his peripheral vision. He can still see what's going on over there. But you get the idea, right? They can kind of see each other and they can interact with each other. So the next little stage here is what we call a scale anchor. So we have this mug that I have from the show. And what I did, this is the normal size mug, right? So it goes in the normal size scale. So I modeled that mug, and then I made a 3D print of a half scale mug that looks like it. So if we give you that, then theoretically those things should be approximately the same.
Wow.
So if you lower... And what that does is that it's establishing what you know to be true in scale. You know that one of those mugs is one size, and you think that the other mug is the same size in that particular scene. And so when you do that, it brings these things together. So you could still kind of go, okay, maybe he's bigger, but when you start to bring in additional things that ground that scale, then it starts to make the illusion far more believable. So what we'll do in the case of I'm a Virgo or any of these other things is if we had a platform that extended out a little bit further, and we had like a half-scale chair, then we could put the half-scale chair on his scale island, and he could sit on a tiny chair. And if we had the replica of that chair in normal scale, she could be sitting down. And so you could have a conversation with these two people on two different chairs, having a conversation with each other, but his chair is half the size, but in perspective, it feels like it's the same chair that she's sitting in. So we would do that with, there are a few scenes in this show where he's having dinner at a restaurant with his girlfriend. And so half of the table is on his scale island, and then her half of the table is back there. And he has like little plates and little glasses and so forth, and she has normal size glasses. And we could line those up and they could kind of interact with one another. The same is true for furniture or cars or anything that lives on his island is in the same scale as he is. So as long as you take like the stuff that's in the back and you shrink it down and put it on his scale island, it blends together. There's another scene where he's in the kitchen and he's talking to his aunt, and he's sitting on the countertops. And so the front of the countertop was half scale, with half-scale knives and half-scale appliances and so forth. And it matched in perspective to the real set, which was twice as far away. And we kind of went a step further, and he was standing inside of the countertops, and with her, we had full-size puppet legs, so giant puppet legs that she could interact with, but we set it up so that the waists would match. So he is in forced perspective, but the legs are further away, which was probably one of the most complex setups that we had. I don't think we have anything more that we can do here. I know I'm standing in front of this.
Could we try and have
imagery.
them chink cups or something like that?
Sure,
You reckon-
sure.
I'm not sure how that would look.
You'll have to lower your cup. There. Whoop, pull it back.
It is hard to do.
Yeah. Guillermo,
Yeah.
Pull your cup back a little bit. No, Guillermo. Yep. And then can you reach that, Sophia? Is it Sophie or Sophia? Clink. But that's the idea. Yeah. So that's a super fast demonstration of how this all works. So if you have let's take this a little step further for discussion. And that is, I intentionally framed his feet out so that we wouldn't have to deal with trying to integrate them. So if we did tilt down here and we had our stool in frame, so his feet are still at the same distance perceptibly as hers is. And so what we would do here is we would shoot it like this, and then we would get a clean plate, and then we would just erase the stool, roto just his feet, and then you could do a little mat underneath him for a contact shadow, and then it would feel like he was standing on that surface, even though he is in frame. And we did have plenty of shots like that where the platform is actually in the frame of the shot, and we had to erase it and then do a little bit more further integrating. So you're not limited to cutting off his feet. You can, if you have a little bit of roto know-how or some compy skills, you can make it feel like he's in the frame without doing a whole green screen drop behind him and trying to do a whole comp and everything like that. All you're doing is worrying about his feet, which is a lot easier than trying to do an entire green screen full. What else? Do we have anything else I can make this better?
No, I think it's been great. I'm curious about moving the camera.
Okay.
And keeping the illusion going.
All right. So I can't do this live. Maybe I can with your help, Sylvia. So the problem with moving the camera is that once you start doing that, then the illusion is broken because it only works with the 1-point perspective of the camera lens. And once you break that, then you're breaking what that perspective is doing. So let's see. It's really weird working with this backwards frame. So you have it right, Sophia. As I move this way, I think you need to move that way.
Like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, she's counter-moving to what the camera is doing by the ratio of the scale. So if this guy is moving 2 feet this way, then she's actually moving 1 foot in the opposite way, if my math is right, and I think it is. And so you can have, like in Lord of the Rings, they had a motion control camera, and they could move the camera back and forth. And that motion control camera, all of the information that was being derived from that was being fed into a platform that she would be on that would be doing the counter move on that. So anytime, anywhere that they were moving the camera, the platform would be moving in the opposite direction. We never got to do that on I'm a Virgo. We didn't have the time, and we didn't have Lord of the Rings money. So we limited it to these kind of proscenium arch portmanteau types of setups where we could just set the scale, and then you go in and then you start shooting coverage, and we had puppets to shoot the coverage so that you could shoot over the shoulders and stuff of the puppets, and you were in the appropriate scale. But once you sell the scale at the beginning of the shot, then the audience is on board. They know how big these characters are in relationship to one another, and you don't have to do a forced perspective shot for every shot. You just do it for the master shot, and then all of the rest of the scene plays out because the audience already knows what scale we're in. What else?
Oh, that's brilliant. I think we might let our volunteers go back down to the seats.
so.
Please give them a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
And actually, we might open it up for questions just to Todd.
I didn't really think that it would go quite that quickly or smoothly.
Or smoothly. We thought it
tripping
might
over
fail.
the camera.
But please, if anyone's got any questions, I'm actually going to come around with the microphone.
Thank you. Great demonstration. And what I saw a lot in especially the earlier force perspective stuff you showed us was that they had the ground in frame and they put the actor on the platform, which was blended with the ground. So you didn't see the seam between the force perspective platform and the real ground.
Yes, yes.
And that was one of the things I found the most interesting or impressive about all these shots, that you can blend these surfaces so well together, even like really sturdy objects like a table, and you clearly didn't see a seam.
Right,
so
right.
I would
like the shot in Equinox where they just took a picnic table and just covered it with dirt.
For example, yeah. And if you would
it's
have
the same dirt
any
that's
advice on
around in the rest of the scene, so that dirt completely blends with the rest of it, and dirt is imperceptibly. It doesn't scale, right? At least not at those distances. So even though those dirt granules are twice as big, you're not really dialing into that because you're looking at this big guy walking around and attacking these little people.
Okay. Thank you.
Up here.
Thank you. Thinking you mentioned Lord of the Ring budget. And then I remember seeing something where they did the same, and I think it was in Ring of Power. They probably did it before as well, where they have this setup. And but I believe they mentioned something about having actors and like the cast that sometimes they have a hard time to interact because they, like, I guess because of their formation as an actor, they need to have someone in front. I wonder if in this project where you work, like, the cast they have to adapt to the technology, or you have to come up with a technical solution for them to be able to look in the eyes of the other person.
It's a great question. It varies with what the scene is trying to do, like how intimate is this scene? How much do these actors need to connect, or can they act off of each other with one of them being 10 feet away? So it worked in both instances. If you're just doing expositional stuff, or if you're just like moving the story along, then most of the time the actors were fine with it. They knew their lines. They were hearing each other, so they were acting with and against each other. They just weren't looking into each other's eyes. But in the case with, like, when he's out to dinner with his girlfriend and so forth, and you have these deeper conversations and they're trying to, like, connect to one another and act and react to one another, those would be times where we would set up the iPads. And so we would have cameras on either iPad so that he could be looking at her face and she could be looking at his face. And her iPad would basically be behind his head from the camera's vantage point. So you really didn't have to paint out much. And then his would be kind of down off frame, the one that he's looking at. But it gives them a chance to see what the other one is doing and how the other actor is giving him or her something to work with. So it changed based on how intimate the conversation, how much the actor needed to get from the other actor.
I imagine that because of time constraint, you wouldn't like film 2 times, for example, where the other person is sitting in front and then do the same thing the other way. That will be, like, I guess, too much.
Not even a time constraint, but if you start splitting it up, then they're not acting with one another, right? Because their performances are going to vary for everything. We started running into that once we started getting into digital editing, where the director's like, well, I want this performance from him, and I want this performance from her, and just split it, and then it puts it together. But now those performances are disconnected. and it doesn't feel quite as authentic. So, so we opted not to do those types of things. In one particular situation, we did have to do it because the light was so dim that we couldn't get our depth of field. And so we had to run through a couple of takes focused on her, and then we would rack focus and go to him and get another few takes that we could put together. I think we barely had enough depth of field to actually get his knee in focus when we were focused on his face. But that was only one time that we really had to break the actual forced perspective shot.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Great questions. Anyone else got a question for Todd with it? Just in case anyone came in late, Todd was the visual effects supervisor on I'm a Virgo. That's the show that includes all that great work.
Right.
There's an amazing visual effects publication called Befores and Afters, which
You should check it
has
out.
lots of coverage of the show.
Hi, great demonstration. I was wondering what you think are some of the key benefits of having a sequence like that with forced perspective in camera, and do you think there is a certain point in shot complexity where it no longer makes sense to try and have it all in one shot,
Yes.
where it would be easier to just split the shots?
Yeah, that is a great question. So the benefits that you get from having a forced perspective shot in camera is one that we were talking about earlier with the actors. The actors can act with one another, as opposed to if you're comping them in, like you're shooting him on green screen somewhere else, and then but you shot her, you don't get a connection between the characters, and also the actors are, if you don't have them together, they're trying to imagine the other person with them, and that's way different from an acting perspective than having the other person with you. So that is kind of this intangible value to the shots. The actors make their choices based on how they're acting with one another, rather than how they are imagining how they would be acting with one another, if that makes sense. The next benefit is the integration of the two elements. So when you're shooting in a forced perspective shot, you have the two people here, and they're being lit by the same lighting. They're in the same environment. And so when you shoot them like that, there's no thoughts about how you're going to integrate them. If you shoot them on a green screen and you're trying to well, the lighting was kind of like this, and we have a key light over here and so forth, you still have to despill it, and then you have to balance it in the comp to make them integrate into the shot appropriately. And then you also have to worry about edges, and all of that are conscious choices that the compositor is making to try and get them to get integrated together and make them feel natural. When if you just shot it in forced perspective, it is natural because you're getting everything optically together. And I think there's a lot of value to that. And especially in a case with this particular show, which has a look to it. What was the rest of your question? Did that cover it all?
The second part was if you think there's sort of a place where a shot just gets too complicated to try and get it all in the same shot.
If your camera needs to be moving a lot, if there's a ton of action that's going on, those get to be much more complicated, and sometimes it becomes easier to shoot them as elements than it is to build another set. Like in the case of the talk yesterday, I keep on referring to the movie The Gate from the 80s, and they had these characters that were a quarter scale, and they would build quarter scale sets that were 4 times the distance away, and they would be incorporated with the real actors who were then closer to camera. But building those sets is no small feat, so you really want to weigh the value of that. Like, is it better to just shoot them on green screen and then shrink them down, or shoot them appropriately in perspective and then comp them? Or can we build this set that kind of matches? And I mean, sets are built to be destroyed anyway. They're like flats, and so you can build them pretty cheap. And especially if you're on a low budget, you can get away with that type of stuff. If you, I don't know, if you have a hallway shot and then you extend the hallway with a miniature hallway, it's not that much more to extend the hallway than it is to build the foreground hallway. So you could just make this forced perspective shot work in camera, and then you don't have a post-production shot that you have to worry about later.
Thank you.
Cool.
I have a quick question.
No.
Okay. So, and it's actually an extension from his question. So, at some moment, because you have to work with such high f-stops because you're trying to avoid depth of field issues,
Yeah.
how are you solving introducing something that looks like the depth of field should be correct? Like, for example, if you had like, you know, a tree in the foreground that should have been defocused, or even the environment in the background that should have been defocused as well. Mm-hmm. Do you fake that as well by distance, or do you actually do masks in windows to do depth of field fakely for those backgrounds and foregrounds?
On the foreground shot, or on the forced perspective shots, it wasn't that big of a deal because you're ostensibly focused on the distant character, and you're forcing the depth of field up to the foreground character. So as you expand that depth of field, that stuff back there is not going to change substantially. And so if anything, if you had something in the foreground that was supposed to be closer than he was, then you would either have a miniature version of that on his scale island, which would match the focal distance, or you would shoot something close up to camera with the correct depth of field and then comp it on top of him. So we did do that a few times where we extracted what was in the background plate because he was going behind it and just put that back on top of him. But since he was the same distance away as in the shot as he was with that foreground object, we didn't really have to play with that much.
I've got a clip running, Todd. You might just have to watch it there or turn around. And it's just like a witness cam from I'm a Virgo.
Yes.
Wondering if you can sort of walk people through it.
Okay, so he's on his scale island, so you can see the platform there. He's on a little table and a little chair. She's actually not the actor that he's talking to. The actor that he's talking to is like somewhere over here. So she is further away from the camera. This one is just an extra who's in the restaurant off to the side. And so you can see we didn't have to make a crazy chair or anything like that. He was framed out of the shot. And this witness camera was actually to provide an element because they're dining next to a window. And so we took this element and then we extracted him and put his reflection into the window. Because if we shot him, he basically would not be in the reflection of the window because he's so far away from it. So you have to fake how big he is. And I actually had to do a previs of this shot to prove that we needed to do this, to show like how big he would be if he were big and next to that window.
Awesome. We'll just keep that playing. Anyone got any other questions for Todd? I'll just go over here.
This is one of the shots, by the way, that we had to break the shot up because we couldn't get the depth of field appropriately deep enough.
Thanks for the great intro here. So you basically have to go hyperfocal then to have everything in focus.
That's the idea in really kind of base terms. But when you're pushing that depth of field, especially when you're working with a normal camera that has like f-stops and so forth, your limit is the background person needs to be in focus and the foreground person needs to be in focus. And if it starts to go out of focus beyond that, that is fine as long as the people who are in the same plane, the same distance away from the camera, are both in focus. So we refer to the character as either the story scale character or the actor scale character. So the story scale character, the big person that is in this story, is right across from the normal size person. So they are the same distance away from camera, so their focus needs to be the same. So once you start moving them, you need to expand that depth of field to the point where it starts going out of focus maybe a little bit right after the close guy, and then it starts going out of focus after the far person. But that's how you rectify that.
Okay, and like, how would you compensate for lighting? Like, especially if you go like over like 2:1 scale, I think like miniatures would probably react differently to the lights on set. Do you have to like relight them separately to match them, or?
If it were really, really intentional, like if you saw a source light or something like that, then we would get a different light that would be next to him, smaller,
Okay.
and closer probably. It would depend on where the light is in the scene overall. There's one scene where he's in a liquor store and he's walking down the aisles and the fluorescent lights are right above where he is. And so we made little half-scale fluorescent lights and hung them above him, matched in perspective to the real fluorescent lights, so that when he was walking under him, you would get that lighting that was coming from the fluorescence. And then we would paint them out with the empty plates so that you would get the real fluorescence back in the shot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for those questions. I'm coming, Hugo, but I'm going to make a stop on the way.
Yeah, you talked a lot about small humans, big humans, because that's, of course, one of the big parts that you did on Virgo.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if you got any other creative uses of force perspective. I know you also showed us a shot where they put like a spaceship that used to be bigger.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen anything, other than that where force perspective was used to maybe advance the filming process or something like that?
Like the spaceships in the presentation, there was also the hanging miniature in Aliens, where they had the miniature set extension, basically. So they didn't have money to build a huge set, so they used money to build a half set, and then they made a small set that matched perspective. No. Why are you pushing me around? And then there were the examples like the sandcrawler in Rise of Skywalker, or the plane in Jurassic Park, or Jurassic World. So you have anything that would be less expensive to build small, you could just put into the foreground. I've had other filmmakers who were doing low budget stuff where they just needed some period cars, and they couldn't find period cars, and so they found models of period cars, and they just put them close to the camera, and then the actors were further away from the camera. They shot it outside, so it was sunny, so they could hit that depth of field, and you just don't know that those cars are not real.
I have one, if you forgive me, I have another question. And if this is stupid, please let me know. I was wondering, because, of course, the f-stop is relationship with the size of the sensor, and were there any, I guess it's two questions. Were there any considerations of using a smaller sensor camera that would have a lot of resolution, but the sensor would be small so that your f-stop could be more controllable? Or have you ever considered talking with camera manufacturers about that kind of stuff? Because there are cameras that have high resolutions with very small sensors. Mm-hmm. Could that be a solution to try to get, like, I guess, a camera that would be made, like custom made to do these kind of things?
Yes, I think that would be a great idea.
Oh, it's not stupid.
No, that's a great thought. It wasn't really a consideration on this particular show because we were using Alexas and film cameras and so forth, and I wasn't going to come in and say, hey, why don't you use this consumer camera because it has a smaller chip. But I think it would be a big sell to go to a camera manufacturer and say, hey, can you make this camera that would specifically help us for forced perspective shots, simply because forced perspective isn't done enough to warrant the investment into that.
But still a camera with professional features, I guess.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the same way they have a black and white Alexa,
Yeah.
they could have a Alexa with all the features of SDI outs, of all the things
Just
we
a
need.
tiny
Exactly,
sensor.
but still pumping resolution into it, I guess. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Maybe
I wonder if you change, because you can change your recording area on the sensor.
the sensor, yes.
I wonder if, but then you're talking about, well, now you're losing resolution, so you need
And
to
distance
like have a sensor.
as well,
Yeah.
and you're like having to be further away.
Right.
You'll probably get dropping to 3K or something, which probably wouldn't be enough.
Wouldn't-
yeah, but
well,
this is an
probably wouldn't
interesting
be bad.
conversation.
Wouldn't be bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk later.
Can you put that picture up I've just got on my computer here? This is the
Yeah.
supermarket. Can you explain what's going on here, Todd?
Okay, so like I had mentioned, this was the liquor store shot where he's walking underneath the lights. And so you can see in the middle there and right above him are little versions of fluorescent lights that the grips and the gaffer managed to like rig up so that they would be right underneath him in perspective. Now this is the set photographer taking this picture, so he is off axis of the actual forced perspective gag, but from the camera, those lights match up to the real lights in the background. So we're getting the benefit of the lighting on his back, but feeling like it's coming from the lights in the background. Now all of this stuff is miniature. So all of these little packets and potato chips and so forth were all built by the art department in half scale, and the shelving was built in half scale to match the rest of the shelving in the liquor store. So this is real scale right here, and this is a miniature right here, and we just matched it up so that the perspective lines would match to the shot. And then the camera is nodal. So that means that the point of convergence in the lens is moved over top of the head of the tripod. So that way when you're tilting or panning, then the camera, the place where we're recording, isn't shifting back and forth. Because even that little movement, if your sensor is out here, and you're tilting and you're panning the camera, that is still shifting in space, and so you get this kind of parallax going on, and it's breaking the illusion. So we have a nodal head on this, which offsets the camera so that when we pan and tilt, then the illusion isn't broken. So as he's walking along here, the camera is actually following him. It's live and following him as he walks. So you can have dynamic cameras, you can have loose cameras or cameras that are alive in the frame and not break the illusion. It doesn't have to be a locked camera. And then he's coming out from twice as far away. He comes out from between the things. You can't really see it. Oh, yes, you can. There's a bunch of mirrors along here. Here's his feet on the platform. So you're getting kind of a peek into what's behind this thing. So this whole thing is up on a platform. We have this big scale island for him to walk around on, and this whole thing lives on that scale island. And you can see back here that there's this platform. He's walking along it, and you can kind of see the back of the shelves. And in the final shot, we took some boxes and so forth and kind of put them in front of in front of it so that no one would get any wiser.
Awesome. I think we have time for one more question, if anyone has one. Right, here we go. Oh, the volunteer.
Yes.
That team.
I've got a question specifically about I Am Virgo. It's a quick one. There are a couple of shots where the main character is sitting on the back of a car. Did you like what did the prop look like that he was sitting on or was next to? Did you build the car in a small scale? Did you build the back of the car in a small scale?
All of those things. So we built a small car for him to ride in, and we would get shots of him in that small car. We built a half-scale back end of that car because there were some times when he's riding out with his friends and he gets in and out of the car. And so we matched the small back end of the car to the real car. So his friends were in the real car further away, and he was in the little car, and he could climb in and out of the car. And then we would blend that with the photography of the real car to make that sit in a little bit better. And then when he's driving around Oakland, we had a real car with his friends in it, and we had a 12-foot puppet that was anchored into the back of the car. And so they were just driving around Oakland with this 12-foot character in the back of the car. And when we were wide enough to see his face, the puppet's face wasn't quite up to photoreal as matching the actors. So we shot some elements of Jarrell and comped his head into the puppet for like 1 or 2 shots. But it was constantly cutting back between the puppet and then the puppet, and then we did a pass with Jarrell in this rig. Go back to it. What are you doing? So we had the miniature car up on a platform. We did all of the measurements to know where we needed the actor's head to be in physical space, so it matched where the character's head would be. And so then we had this miniature bit of the car, so you can see how high that platform is. Then that is on a process trailer rig, which is connected to a car over here. We had 3 cameras on him covering him, and then we were just pulling him around Oakland, and he's ostensibly in forced perspective space because he is in the right space, but everything else behind him is technically twice as far as it needs to be. And you don't dial in that he's the wrong size because we're cross-cutting between this really big character, and you know he's big. And what this gave us, to your point with the acting and so forth, what this gave us was Jarrell had all of this environment and everything around him to act against. He's in this world of wonder. This is the first time he's out in the city, and it's just all overwhelming for him. But even though we locked down the streets of Oakland, we didn't lock down the sidewalks. So we had all kinds of Oakland locals walking up and down the sidewalk going, what the fuck is going on with this kid up in this little miniature car? And so they were calling out to him and so forth, and he was responding to all of that interaction with them naturally. And you wouldn't have gotten that if you had shot it on a green screen or even on an LED stage or anything like that. It just fed him and his performance. And as logistically complicated as this feels, I think it was definitely the right choice to go this way. And it was fun.
I think we have to wrap it up there. Can you please thank Todd Sheridan Perry?
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Amazing.